Rhaenyra's heartbreaking reaction to Lucerys' death explained. What happens when a mother loses her son, not just to war, but to an act so brutal, so unnecessary, that it shatters every remaining illusion of civilized conflict. Rhaenyra Targaryen's reaction to Lucerys Valerion's death isn't just grief. It's the moment the dance of the dragons stopped being about crowns and became about blood. And trust me, what unfolds after this tragedy makes every other Game of Thrones revenge plot look like a kindergarten squabble. Before we dive into the most devastating maternal breakdown in Westerosi history, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, because we're about to unpack psychological warfare, dragon vengeance, and family trauma that would make even the Lannisters say, maybe that's too much. Let's get started. The news of Luke's death reaches Dragonstone not through ravens or messengers, but through silence. Rhaenyra is waiting for her son to return from Storm's End, probably planning their next strategic move, maybe even allowing herself a moment of maternal relief that her boy completed a simple diplomatic mission. Except Luke never comes home. His dragon never darkens the sky. And in that awful, stretching silence, Rhaenyra begins to understand that something has gone catastrophically wrong. This is not the silence of delay. This is the silence of death. When confirmation finally arrives that Aemon Targaryen killed Lucerys and his dragon Eryx above Shipbreaker Bay, Rhaenyra's world doesn't just crack, it implodes. This woman has endured political betrayal, watched her father choose duty over her repeatedly, survived years of court manipulation, and fought tooth and nail for her birthright. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepares a mother for the murder of her child. And here's where things get absolutely devastating. Luke was not just her son. He was her second-born, her gentle boy, the one who never wanted violence, who was terrified of the responsibility thrust upon him. He was the kid who accidentally took Aemon's eye and lived with that guilt. He was innocent in ways that Westeros rarely allows people to be. Rhaenyra's immediate reaction is what you would expect from someone experiencing catastrophic loss: shock, disbelief, the desperate hope that maybe the information is wrong. But then reality settles in with the weight of a collapsing castle. Her son is gone, torn apart in the sky by his uncle and a war dragon 3 times the size of Eryx. Luke died terrified, died young, died in a conflict he barely understood. And for Rhaenyra, this is not just personal tragedy. This is the moment everything changes. The historical accounts tell us that Rhaenyra collapses when she hears the news. This iron-willed woman, this dragon rider, this queen who has stared down the most powerful men in Westeros, she physically cannot stand under the weight of this grief. She goes into early labor from the shock and stress, delivering a stillborn daughter she names Visenya. So let us be absolutely clear here. Rhaenyra does not just lose one child to Aemon's violence. She loses 2. The trauma of Luke's death literally kills her unborn daughter. If you want to understand why Rhaenyra becomes the figure she does later in the dance, why her desire for vengeance burns hotter than Dragonfire itself, this is ground zero. This is the origin story of a mother's wrath. But here's what makes Rhaenyra's grief so uniquely powerful and so culturally significant. She does not just mourn. She transforms. The woman who still believed in peaceful resolution, who thought maybe this conflict could be navigated through diplomacy and strategic marriages, that woman dies with Lucerys. What emerges from his crucible of loss is someone far more dangerous, far more ruthless, and far more willing to burn the entire world down if that is what justice requires. Her grief does not make her weak. It makes her absolutely terrifying. The way Rhaenyra channels her devastation reveals everything about her character. She does not immediately fly to King's Landing on Syrax to burn the Red Keep. She does not make reckless emotional decisions despite the agony tearing through her. Instead, her grief crystallizes into something cold and calculated. She begins plotting revenge with the precision of someone who understands that mourning is a luxury she can indulge in after her enemies are destroyed. This is maternal fury weaponized. This is love turned into an instrument of war. And let us talk about what this moment does to the broader conflict, because Luke's death is the point of no return for the Dance of the Dragons. Before this, there was still theoretical room for negotiation, for some kind of settlement between the Blacks and the Greens. Viserys had just died, the realm was divided, but maybe, just maybe, cooler heads could prevail. Aemond killing Lucerys obliterates any possibility of peace. This is no longer about competing claims to the Iron Throne. This has become blood feud. This has become generational trauma. This has become the kind of conflict that only ends when one side is completely annihilated. Rhaenyra's grief ensures that compromise is no longer on the table. The psychological complexity of Rhaenyra's reaction also reflects something deeply human about loss and guilt. She sent Luke to Storm's End. She gave him that mission. And while logically she knows she could not have predicted Aemond would be there, could not have foreseen that her brother's son would commit kinslaying in the sky above the Stormlands, the maternal guilt is inescapable. Every parent who has ever lost a child to circumstances beyond their control understands this particular torture. The endless loop of what-ifs, the desperate mental reconstruction of decisions that might have changed the outcome. Rhaenyra sent her boy to his death, and that knowledge haunts her every subsequent action. What makes this even more heartbreaking is understanding what Lucerys represented to Rhaenyra beyond just being her son. He was proof that despite the whispers about his parentage, despite the rumors and the political complications of his birth, he was worthy. He was good and kind and brave in his own way. His legitimacy was constantly questioned, his right to inherit Driftmark challenged, and Rhaenyra fought fiercely to protect him from a world that wanted to diminish him. And then Aemond just erases him from existence in a moment of rage and violence that proves all of Rhaenyra's fears about what the Greens were capable of doing to her children. The aftermath of Luke's death sees Rhaenyra making decisions that define the rest of the dance. She authorizes increasingly brutal strategies. And this is not a villain origin story where the character's motivation feels hollow or manufactured. This is a mother whose child was murdered, who then lost another child to the trauma of that murder, and who decides that the only appropriate response is total war. The brilliance of how this tragedy unfolds is that it makes everyone complicit in escalation. Aemond may have killed Luke, but the structures that put them on opposite sides of a war, the adults who prioritize power over family unity, the entire rotten system that demands violence as proof of legitimacy. These are the real villains. And Rhaenyra, in her grief, becomes both victim and perpetrator, both sympathetic figure and architect of further tragedy. That moral complexity is what makes the Dance of Dragons such compelling storytelling. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.